All right. Welcome to Telgoo5 Talks, the wireless industry podcast that goes behind the headlines to bring you the real story of what's going on in the industry. I'm your host, Stuart Chowning, Chief Strategy Officer at Telgoo5. And in a world where everyone's connected, the battle for subscribers is more competitive than ever. I mean, you've got the carriers, you've got all of these MVNOs, you have new entrants coming into the space. Everyone's looking for an edge. And so today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jon Horovitz to discuss the latest trends. Jon is an absolute titan and industry expert. He has touched every single part of the wireless industry. And so his experience is both deep and wide, and he's also just a thrill to talk to as well. He is still helping companies launch services today. He's got his own podcast, and so I encourage you to go find him, listen to him, and we are thrilled to have him on Telgoo5 Talks today. And so, Jon, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to Telgoo5 Talks.
Stuart, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to see you again and have an opportunity to chat. I wish you all the luck with your podcast. Yeah, it's really, really good to be here today to start a conversation with you.
Great, Jon. Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, there are a number of folks that have been in the industry since it was the original days before wireless even started. We remember when access line loss at the carriers and the operators, the ILECs and RBOX, all of these guys, they were worried about losing access lines, and so we saw that trend. They were adding wireless to protect the bundles and the home lines. You know, we saw that line loss going, and now we're even seeing some of that same thing play out with cable operators, right? They're losing their cable lines to subscription services and online options. And so now they're trying to add wireless into the bundle for both acquisition as well as retention. And so those trends, you know, kind of keep going over and over. It's like bell bottoms. It all comes back around again, doesn't it, Jon?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, the landscape has definitely changed, and there's a big shift right now. As we remember back in the day, the first shift was landline to wireless, and it was all about building out towers and backhaul and trying to get subscribers on this new technology that people weren't really sure what it was or how it worked or what it really meant. And it was all about spectrum availability and engineering and educating customers, really trusting the network, that you weren't being listened in on or that your call actually would complete. I remember the days where if I jumped on a plane from where I am in New Jersey to California, and someone wanted to call me, they had first dial 1-800 dot 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 roam, and then that would connect the call. And wow, we've come a long way from that, where you can do a WhatsApp call, across the globe. But the challenge is then not only was customer education on what this thing was, obviously the high price of owning this, not just the handset, which was $5,000-6,000 to the service, where you got billed by the minute. And people would get a discount if they called after 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. So you would save all your calls up for that time period, and then free weekends. I mean, consumers today, especially the younger generations, it's ubiquitous now when they use their phone, how they use their phone, and what they use their phone for. What's changed in my mind was first it was building out your coverage and convincing people that wireless is the next frontier. Today, I know we really didn't touch too much on what's happened today. Hopefully, we will during our conversation. But it's scaling, it's monetization of your investment, and staying ahead of what your customers really need in a data first environment. So it has totally done a 180 since we've been in the business, and it's exciting on what's coming.
Yeah, certainly. And we have seen that evolution as it was originally about the minutes, right? It was all about the talk and the spoken communication, but now that has all shifted to data, and we've seen the technology evolving with that, right? So as the subscriber use case has evolved, so has the technology as we went from 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and as it will continue to grow from a pipe perspective to bring content and from a communication perspective. And so we've certainly been seeing that. The other, major shift is, as you were saying, back in those early days of wireless, it was all about adoption, right?
Yep.
So it was customers trying to understand the technology, access to the devices, and then the cost of service. But today it is completely ubiquitous, right? Almost every person in America has at least one device in their hand. In homes, we now see that there are literally dozens of devices within a subscriber's house that are connected to the internet, be that through a wireless device, a fixed wireless, or even through the Wi-Fi and fiber networks. And so the evolution of the technology has grown as well as adoption, and now everyone has it. And so as a result of it being so ubiquitous, the challenge now isn't looking for a new subscriber, but the carriers and the MVNOs and the providers are all now competing for the same subscribers. How does that change things as operators go out and try to get the next customer?
Well, it's adding value and meeting the customer's specific needs. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is when you talk about multiple devices in each house, probably one bill. People like your company at Telgoo5, that we call the OSS BSS providers, and the billing and all that kind of stuff. You can now have I can be on one carrier and through an MVNO, and then my wife and or children could be on a different MVNO on a different carrier, and I can get that on one bill. And the days of, okay, we all have to be on this brand or this MNO, those days are bygone. The fact that the technology has increased so much that you can consolidate and make it easier for the customer. But more importantly, as you say, differentiation and how are they going to attract more customers? It's all about, as I said earlier, it's meeting the customer need and getting a stickier customer. I know it's a term that's been overused many years, but finding those things to add value to your subscriber is paramount to success and continued of growth of your business. To port a customer out to transfer, it's an expensive process. It's the customer doesn't see it, but you've got to be quick, you've got to be nimble, you've got to be able to make sure that you've moved that customer from MVNO or carrier A to carrier B with very little disruption. You got to make sure that the customer is aware of all the other things that you offer, so you can upsell them through your sales department or your care centers, et cetera. So it's not just providing basic service, which is now, talk and text is required data. How much do you really need? You're offloading so much to Wi-Fi right now, especially as you mentioned, the cable companies. But you've got to be able to have services that meet that customer's specific needs, and not just one niche. As I preach all the time, your differentiator. My differentiator is XYZ. We attract customers in a market that's underserved. You've got to be able to do that and bifurcate your offer to different types of clients, whether they be ethnic, whether they be age, or whatever it's going to be. So you're not just focused for real growth on just one segment of the population. Now, many people have carriers out there, like people that we know, like Consumer Cellular, is they started out giving low data packages to elderly people, well, that were 50 at the time. Not elderly anymore in my perspective, but they didn't need big buckets of data, so they were able to give talk and text and a little bit of data and keep the cost down. Other ones go to ethnicities that typical carriers cannot get into, closed communities. For example, believe it or not, I do business through our consulting company, Atrium Unlimited, with the Amish and the Mennonites that have specific rules about cellular devices, et cetera, as do other ethnic communities. So really knowing your customer and not just acquiring your customer, but keeping your customer through added services.
Yeah, that's a great point. And as we see this crowded marketplace, everyone is competing for the same groups of customers. You have to figure out the right mix of product, process, people, placement. You've got to figure out what is it that differentiates you from the crowd, because what we know is that the MVNO world does not control the cost. right? The cost structure is controlled by the carrier. And
Right.
so you're not going to be able to just have the lowest cost offering. That's not going to be a successful place to stay to both acquire and retain the customer. The next guy will just have the lowest price. And so you have to figure out what makes your offer and your engagement with the subscriber unique. And we're seeing some of that play out today in a few areas. So we're seeing folks like broadband, wireless internet service providers, cable, and others, in middle America that are now adding and adding wireless to their bundle mix. We're starting to see, we saw the Genie bottle was open with Ryan Reynolds and Mint Mobile. They
Right.
grew this big base. It sold to T-Mobile, and now there are so many others that are trying to come into the space to do just that. But certainly, influencers and endorsers are going to have a material part of this acquisition model, and certainly those who are able to speak to their constituents, their customers, their followers, and to be able to present a product that has a national coverage. It's a good value, and it engages them with the providers and with the endorsers that they follow. That is where I think we're going to see some success in this space. But as a result of that, it means the traditional revenue model, where it was just minutes and megs, all of a sudden it changes just a little bit. It's going to continue to evolve as these new players come into the marketplace. And so as you think about revenue, it was just on the pipe before. That's becoming commoditized. What do you think the revenue model looks like for wireless as we go into the future?
Well, first of all, you talked about Mint Mobile and the changing landscape there, and everybody that we speak with wants to be the next Mint Mobile. We have a celebrity, we have a sports team, we have an influencer. Is that enough to scale your business? So that's the first thing. The other thing you talk about is price. You cannot compete on price anymore. Look at the MVNOs that were with us a year or two ago: TracFone, Mint, Cricket, Metro, Ultra, Boost. They're not MVNOs anymore. And I have to throw a shout out to my good friend Peter Adderton, who's very vocal about this. These MVNOs are now brands, and they're backed by billions of dollars of advertising and marketing strength. And quite honestly, as a traditional MVNO would have to pay a wholesale cost, mark it up, and then sell it to their subscribers, realistically, these former MVNOs that are now brands don't have a network cost. So really, I mean, the advantage that they had is now, exacerbated with the fact that, yeah, we can pretty much do what we want. Look at some of the things that Total by Verizon, great success story, is doing. Boost. Who knows what's going to happen with Boost now with the EchoStar Dish AT&T thing that just happened at the end of August. So, bundling is already a major lever for MVNOs to attract customers, streaming, cloud storage. But you've got to present, in my opinion, wireless as a broader lifestyle. And I think the winners that are going to do this is not just targeting the niche and the underserved markets. In short, acquisition of customers is not just merely signing up new subs, as they say, because anybody can sign up new subs, whether it's price or whether it's a special event. It really, the winners in this next few years of wireless are going to be the people that own the customer relationship across more parts than just the lifestyle. It all goes to the ease of activation, the ease of the MVNO's operations, the new things that they're going to be able to bundle in. I know of some people that are going to be offering streaming services like the big three carriers do, that it's going to be available now to MVNOs so they can better compete. Do I change carriers just because I can get Prime or Max where I can't get it with my MVNO? That's going to evolve as well to give us a more level playing field. But yeah, you need to strengthen your relationship with your customer. And with some of the very price conscious MVNOs out there, there's no loyalty at all when it comes to price. I mean, I can get, for example, 5 gigabytes unlimited talk and text for, let's just say, $19. Someone's going to come in at $14. So,
Yeah.
where's the loyalty? So, and then you look at what Mobile X is doing as well, where, you basically don't need unlimited data because you're not using it. And again, not to harp on Peter, but he said to me a couple of years ago, why would you pay your electric company for 50 kilowatts every month when you're using 30. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the impetus for Mobile X. And so, yeah, you've got to go beyond the traditional offering. And not to sound like a broken record, know your customer, especially enterprise customers. Know what their pain points are, know what you need to do to successfully retain that customer for the long term.
Yeah, I think that that's really sage counsel, and historically, the operators that came into the space were existing, voice companies. So it was the phone companies, it was the those providers, and they had some other experience. Now it's brands and it's other retail organizations coming in, and there is a bit of discovery that happens as they come into the space because you've got some market entry elements. Thinking about that as registering with the FCC and the states, you have to choose the raw good, which now is a commodity coming from the towers of AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. That has to get turned into a product, right? And that's an important selection, and that's a place where Telgoo 5 sits in the ecosystem, is that we are connected to all of the carriers. And so we're agnostic of carrier, but what we really do is we provide you a full turnkey product that provides devices and logistics, and it allows you to provide the service while you provide the voice and the engagement with the customer. And the platform really needs to help you accomplish that. And so I think you're exactly right. And finding the right mix of vendors, the right mix of coverage, the right mix of price, but really having your voice to your customers that provides value to that distinct group of folks. And so I think you're right on. As we go through and as you think about the next 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to see just as much evolution. You've got Starlink now providing service from low orbit satellites. We have others that are trying to get into the space, be that Amazon, be that other operators that will try to disrupt the space. We have continued entrants coming in from MVNOs and things of that nature. What do you think will drive acquisition and drive that trend as we go into the future?
I think the operators that are going to win in this game are not going to be the ones that just are carriers. And I think the word carrier may go away shortly. And I think it's really, they're going to be platform enablers for enterprises with AI and vertical specific ecosystems that are going to serve these new markets and current markets, but a lot of emerging markets will come out as well. When you take a look at, for example, offering AI, it's not just ChatGPT. You've got opportunities in a lot of different fields. Let's take agriculture, for example. You talked about AI, but let's also talk about what you said, the satellite. All the major key players, household names are now getting into this business. Let's take the farmer with thousands of acres of crops. How is he going to monitor his crops? How is he going to know how to maximize his product, which is fruits, vegetables, or whatever we're going to call it, and use satellite technology versus the old school way of walking the fields and doing that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of things that are going to be coming out through the satellite connection and through AI that I don't think we truly understand AI yet. I hark back to the 1980s when the Terminator movie came out and AI took over. I'm sure, again, some of our younger viewers and listeners, watched the Terminator with the former governor of California, and you'll see what happens if you don't put governors on this kind of stuff. Okay, that's just a side note, but I think to answer your question, you're going to have to evolve as an MVNO, as a carrier, and embrace these new technologies. And I'm sure there's things coming down the pike that we haven't even discussed yet or thought of yet. So, it's going to be challenging, but again, it's going to be rewarding and it's going to open up a lot of new revenue opportunities for both the carriers and MVNOs, and then hopefully their dealers as well, where they're not just selling a commodity, which is wireless and data. Data has
Yeah.
become a commodity now. It used to be, a special thing and you had to have a smartphone and da da da. But now you got a wristwatch, you've got foldables, you've got all these things that can deliver to you. And I once said years ago, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to watch a movie on my phone.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. I was, I don't watch full-length movies, but obviously the social media that's out there with, with the different platforms that we subscribe to, even the older generations now are using their handset for things they never thought they would. So yeah, to succeed, you're going to have to not just embrace what's coming down, you're going to have to adapt and make that part of your core offerings.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice and counsel again. And I know that you're providing advice and consulting services at Atrium. And so I'm excited to see what your team will continue to lead there. One of the things that we as MVNOs and as prospects are coming in and asking for advice, one of the biggest piece of advice that we give customers today is to say that the challenge and the temptation will be to be all things to all people, right? We're trying to make it, and so we're going to try to have offers for every group and every organization. We're going to try to have for every family, and trying to be all things to all people ultimately will make you nothing to anybody. And so we have really tried to help our clients find their voice, to find what makes them unique, to find that novel element of their product offering, their bundle, the other service that they have, trying to leverage things like cross-sell and upsell and loyalty and retention and save and win back and trying to leverage the power of it, because wireless is not now just a product, but wireless is an engagement tool for your other products, services, and for the other value and content that you might have. And so that's what all of us in the supply chain now are trying to deliver. And so as we continue to speak with clients, we're finding that that's a message that's resonating with folks. Ears are perked up and it's creating opportunity. And I would tell you that from my perspective, I still see lots of opportunity in the wireless and MVNO space. As operators come into this space, there is still lots of opportunity to find your voice, to find your customers, and to find that profitability that you've been searching for. Do you agree with that, John?
Absolutely. And I can give you an example about that. And the carriers have become a lot more willing to step out of their comfort zones as well. I'll give you an example here in New York City. Atrium Consulting has a client that is taking the copper wire out of elevators for the emergency call boxes and replacing those with a SIM card. And they don't need talk, they don't need a text, they need just one a week. Press the button to make sure it's working. And it's a very low usage, but it's revenue for the carrier or MVNO. It could be $10 a month, whatever it is on a low cost. And, at last count, when we sat down with this company and started working with them to give them a SIM card to be able to do this. Now, yeah, in an emergency, yeah, they're going to do more, usage, et cetera, et cetera. There's 86,000 elevators in Manhattan alone. That's not counting the other four boroughs. And that's just one metropolitan city versus what we got across the country.
Yeah.
So we're feeling our way with them right now, and they're starting to scale a little bit, but it's something that would be foreign to a carrier 3 years ago. When you say, this is what we need just once a week, it's going to be this and that. Come up with a program. Yeah, it's low revenue, but the volume could be spectacular, especially as new construction goes in and there's no copper wire behind the door. The other thing that I think is on the horizon is a global MVNO. And I've read a few things about people that are trying to work on connectivity across, not just roaming, but an international roaming, but actually having the ability to use your phone wherever you travel. And again, this is down the road, but this is where we're going to go. And I think satellite is going to help spur some of these initiatives where it is different. And people that are jumping on a plane and landing, it's, is it still your home network? Is there no international roaming? Is there no surprises? I mean, I went to Europe last year, and I waited to the last minute, so I just did the $10 a day thing, and I got home, got my bill. I was like, "Holy moly, I'm in this business. Why can't I figure this out?" So, so I think there's still a big learning curve for all of us out there, especially the heavy user, the heavy data, the heavy traveler, and then conversely, the carriers. Up until a couple of years ago, not that far, we're back in the future, were very much against travel sims. You'd come into a country, you'd use a SIM for 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, and then you would disconnect. Now you've seen, if you gone to the trade shows that are out there across the world, travel SIM is everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's going to become a new revenue source for a lot of people. The travel agents are activating your SIM card before you get on the plane, so you can tell your friends and families, your business associates, this is, the temporary number, or this is what I'm going to be having, and it's active when you land. So that's also taken a big thing. The carriers hated it because it increased their churn number. Now they're looking at it with a different eye, that hey, this is actually a revenue generator, and this is a customer that maybe we can sell other things to, or if they're constantly traveling back and forth, students, executives, etc., this can be another way to attract and keep customers.
Absolutely. And the use cases do abound, right? And at Telgoo 5, we're supporting a large retail supermarket chain. We've got
Mhm.
others that are developing loyalty programs like that, where you wouldn't expect them to offer a wireless service, but as a tool and as a mechanism to be able to communicate and engage their subscribers and their customers. It's powerful. We're supporting fiber and broadband and MSO, cable operators today. We have traditional prepaid and postpaid. We've got SMB and enterprise. And so we see the IoT, the travel sim, we see each of those cases. And you're exactly right that everybody has to find their piece of it. And again, it gets back to that. You don't necessarily have to be all things to all people. Find your niche, find
Mhm.
your voice, find
Right.
your customers and speak to them, but be ready. Choose the right partners, choose the right network, but choose, pick, and then go after that group. My friend Will Curry and the folks at Pure Talk, they've done a really great job of knowing and understanding exactly who their customer is. They've named him. His name is Hank, and so
Yep.
they know where Hank lives. They know what Hank likes. They know that Hank, still values a handshake, and so as a result, they speak to Hank in Hank's voice in the areas where Hank listens, and from a programming perspective. And as a result of that, they've grown a very effective business looking for that group, similar to what Consumer Cellular has done, going
Mhm.
after a generation of folks that have continued to season, like you and I, John. And so they've gone after that group of folks to give them a sense of comfort. And so we're seeing that play out throughout the industry. And as you and I have chatted today, I think that will continue. And as we continue to advise, counsel, and provide services to our customers, I think we're going to be able to continue to put them in a position to be successful. And so, John, we've spoken a lot about technology. We've spoken a lot about the targets and the kind of customers that we're trying to go after. I'm curious from your perspective, thinking about the workforce for a moment that are in these companies, the types of skills that the new entrants in this space are going to need to hire. What are some of the expertise and what are some of the essential skills that these folks are going to need to have? And how do we fill that talent gap as we try to grow these businesses?
That's a great question. And, the industry's biggest transformation hasn't just been in the networks, it's the people that build and design and run them. 20 years ago in the wireless workforce, your key employees were RF engineering, switch operators, unions that came in and actually, did the tower building of the physical networks. It was people that came to a company and stayed for 20, 30 years, getting their hands dirty and making sure the network could be built, was built, and could sustain. Today, it's employees that have digital skills. It's as much about software as it is about spectrum. So you need people that are very ingrained in the cloud visualization. One thing that is paramount right now is cybersecurity and identity management. Yes, you can still go into a big box retailer and get a prepaid card and sign up as Mickey Mouse, but for those of us that give out our credit card for auto bill and all the other information that we have, it's critical that this information is protected. Data science and AI, we talked about briefly earlier. You've got to have people that know this stuff and are experts. The IoT integration, how do we now integrate some of the examples we were talking about earlier that's not just talk and text, but the things that make things work for your company, meter reading, and we talked about some of the IoT applications that are coming. But more importantly is the customer experience and the digital thinking. Where do you find these new, young, smart individuals that can come into an existing infrastructure, both, from a technology standpoint and from a senior executive standpoint, and say, this is how things need to be done, and this is how we can do them. And continue the transformation, like I said, not just in the network and all the things that are happening, but transform your workforce to better serve customers that need these new technologies and services.
Yeah, that's really great counsel. And at the end of the day, it's people that matter, right? It's
Yep.
people as your customers, it's people as those that you're trying to support, it's people that we're hiring and choosing to both run, grow, and support our businesses. And I know that you have lots of contacts in the industry to help with that. Telgoo 5 is filled with employees that fill many of those roles, but we have to plug the gaps and complement the businesses and the clients that we support. And so I think that as we continue to go forward, those technologies, those skills will continue to emerge. The colleges and universities are churning out and spinning out
Yep.
lots of great experience, but we also need leadership, to connect the dots between
Yeah.
what the subscriber, the ultimate subscriber needs, what the company is able to offer, and then bridging that divide through communication. And communication is going to be key. And so you've done that really well today.
Yeah.
And
When
so
I
any last thoughts, John?
My last thought is, and I just want to say, I don't know who said this, can't take credit for it, but it's something that resonated with me as our industry changes with regards to the type of people working in the industry. It's transitioned really from hard hats to headsets. We don't need the union guy climbing towers every day. We need people to do the things that you just mentioned, to anticipate, build, serve, communicate, and innovate.
Yeah, that's a great place for us to wrap up. And you're exactly right. We need to support the customer. And as the skills and as the use cases have evolved, our businesses, our companies, and our experience have evolved with it. And so I really appreciate you being here today. We want to just take an opportunity to thank Jon Horovitz for being with us. His experience in the industry is tremendous. If you aren't already doing so, make sure that you are following his companies. You can find more about him at atriumunlimited.com. Also, his own podcast, The Boon, is something that you can continue to follow as well. Theboonofwireless.com is where you can find more about him. Follow him, continue to listen to his insights, and reach out to his team as you get into the space. Also, reach out to the Telgoo 5 team. We are here to support new and existing clients in this space. These emerging technologies are right in our wheelhouse, and we are excited to help you as you venture into this space. And so again, that's a wrap for today's Telgoo 5 Talks. Make sure you follow us on all of the platforms for podcasts today. And until next time, this is Stuart Chowning with Telgoo 5 Talks. Let's talk soon.